There is a particular kind of person who, upon meeting someone new, will glance, just once, briefly, at how that person's car looks. Not the model, not the price, the condition, the quiet details, the film of neglect on the windows, the cracked rubber on the wipers that have been cracked for 2 winters now, the check engine light visible through the windshield, glowing orange like a small, unanswered question. Most people would call this judgmental. They would be wrong, or at least, they would be incomplete, because what this person is doing is not judgment in the pejorative sense. It is reading. And the discomfort that observation creates, the slight social awkwardness when someone notices you noticing, points towards something far more interesting than snobbery. Something else is operating underneath it. This is not about cars. It never was. The person who reads a vehicle's condition the way others read a face is not performing superiority. They are gathering information in the only way they know how, through the material evidence of how someone treats the things in their care. A car is not a neutral object. It is a system of small decisions made over time, accumulated into a physical record. Every cracked belt that went unaddressed, every oil change deferred for another month, every slow leak that became a flat, these are not accidents. They are patterns. And the person who has learned to read patterns has usually done so because, at some point in their life, the patterns mattered, not aesthetically, existentially. Most people who develop this particular sensibility did not choose it deliberately. It was taught by circumstance. Psychologists who study attachment and environmental scanning, the way humans learn to read their surroundings for safety and trust signals, note that children raised in environments where adults were inconsistent tend to develop what researchers call hypervigilant attunement. This is not anxiety, though it can look like it. It is a trained perceptual sensitivity. The mind learns early that the distance between how things look and how things actually are is a space where danger lives, and so it begins cataloging. The person who says everything is fine while the kitchen ceiling leaks. The parent who promises and then forgets. The adult who drives a car with bald tires in winter because they will get to it eventually. The child who grows up in that environment does not simply note the bald tires. They note what the bald tires mean. They learn that neglect is a language, and they never stop being fluent in it. This connects directly to what psychologist Nalini Ambati called thin slicing, the human capacity to make accurate assessments of character, competence, and reliability from brief, seemingly trivial observations. Ambati's research demonstrated that these rapid assessments are not shallow or irrational. They are often more accurate than deliberate, extended evaluation. The mind has learned to extract signal from noise at high speed. What looks like a snap judgment is actually a compressed analysis. Years of pattern recognition executing in seconds. The person who glances at a dirty oil cap and feels something shift in their assessment of the person standing next to it is not being unfair. They are being efficient in the precise cognitive sense of that word. What distinguishes people who do this is not cynicism. Most of them are not cynics at all. They tend to be deeply invested in the people they choose to trust, precisely because they are careful about who earns that trust. The scrutiny is the prerequisite for the loyalty. They do not extend faith cheaply because they understand from long experience that faith costs something to repair once it is broken. The car is not the point. The car is the test, and not in a manipulative way. The test is unconscious, automatic, a piece of social perception so ingrained it no longer feels like a decision. They are not checking a box. They are listening for something they have always known how to hear. This extends, inevitably, into how they relate to people. The same attunement that scans a vehicle for signs of delayed maintenance scans a relationship for the same. The unreturned text message, the casual promise that disappears, the small commitment quietly abandoned. These people notice, not because they are scorekeepers, but because they are pattern readers, and patterns are not hidden from them the way they are hidden from people who have learned to look away. There is a particular loneliness in this. To see clearly is not always to be understood. To say I noticed you haven't changed that wiper blade in 2 years is not a statement about the wiper blade. It is a statement about what you do when maintenance is inconvenient. And very few people want to hear that translation out loud. There is a cultural dimension worth naming here. Consumer culture has, for decades, worked very hard to decouple objects from the care they require. The narrative of the upgrade, the idea that when something ages or wears, the correct response is replacement rather than attention, has become so normalized that maintaining what you have is now a mildly eccentric behavior. Advertisements do not sell oil changes, they sell new cars. The language of our economic environment tells people that the relationship between owner and object is disposable by design. The person who reads neglect differently is, in some sense, a dissenter from this framework. They have not accepted the idea that things, and by extension, People, commitments, relationships are simply replaced when maintaining them becomes effortful. This is not nostalgia. It is a different relationship to responsibility. What looks from the outside like judgment is, at its core, a form of respect. For the object, yes, but more fundamentally for the logic of care itself. The person who keeps their vehicle maintained is not performing virtue. They are enacting a philosophy, however unconsciously, that the things you have chosen to own deserve the attention their ownership requires. That saying yes to something means staying in relationship with it, not just in the early days when it is new and effortless, but in the middle days, the ordinary days, when nothing is urgent and everything can theoretically wait. The check engine light is not the failure. The months of choosing not to respond to it are the failure. And the person who understands this, intuitively, at a level below articulation, carries that understanding into every room they enter. There is something quietly generous in how this psychology operates, even when it makes other people uncomfortable. To be read closely is a gift, even when it does not feel like one. The person who notices what you have let slide is the same person who will notice what you are carrying that no one else has seen. The attention is not selective. It does not turn off. The hypervigilance that began as a survival tool becomes, over time, a form of witness. These people are often the ones who remember, who show up, who keep the promises that other people forget they made, because they learned, somewhere early, that the gap between intention and follow-through is exactly the distance at which trust either forms or breaks. The man who glanced at the car in the parking lot, who noted the faded paint, the long unread service sticker in the window, the cracked taillight held together with a strip of red tape, walked away from that observation carrying something he could not quite name. Not contempt, something more like information, a calibration, the kind that happens below the level of language, in the part of the mind that was taught long ago to read the world for what it reveals rather than what it announces. He does not think of himself as judgmental, he thinks of himself as careful, and the distance between those two words is where his entire inner life lives. The real question this raises is not whether his reading is accurate. Often it is. The question is what it costs to move through the world that attentively, and whether the people who do not scan for these signals are freer or simply less informed about what surrounds them. Every person decides, consciously or not, what they will choose to notice, and what you permit yourself to see determines, quietly and completely, who you are willing to become.